So today we're going to be taking a look at the Longines Spirit line of watches and doing a side-by-side comparison of both the 37 millimeter and the 40 millimeter versions of the watch. I've done videos in the past on the 40 millimeter Spirit, so there's going to be more of an emphasis on the 37. But if you're considering one, there is some differences between the two other than the obvious size differences. So we'll go through all that, but let's get to it and check out the watches. All right. So if you missed it, the other day I announced a giveaway on the channel, and to enter you needed to ask a question for an upcoming Q&A. One of the questions was regarding the 37 millimeter Spirit, and I thought why not put together a short standalone video on it. Thanks to Stefan for the question that pretty much made this one happen. I work at a Longines authorized dealer in Toronto, Jambiju, and we had both models available, so I figured why not borrow them. And I have to say, I was surprised by the 37 millimeter. I always liked the 40, and on paper would normally pick a 40 over the 37, but this one has me questioning that. Since I've talked about the 40 millimeter in the past on the channel, let's start though with a quick look at the 37 millimeter, then we'll go through some of the differences between the two. The dial on this model is a matte black. You can get these also in blue and champagne, but I prefer the black on these. Up in the top portion of the dial is the applied winged hourglass logo with Longines and automatic printed. Then down above the 6 is the 5 stars in steel and chronometer. So these are COSC certified movements running the watches. Below that, we have the date, which is something I want to circle back to when comparing the two watches. At the edge of the dial is the minute track with the diamond-shaped markers at every 5 minutes, and that small touch of polish work at the edge of the minute track gives the dial a little bit of extra character with how it catches the light. The applied hour markers offer lots of contrast, especially on these black dial versions of the watch. And between those, the sword style hour and minute hands and the red tipped second hand, they are highly legible. I'll point out one difference now between the two, and that is the lume. The larger Spirit has longer lasting lume, especially on the markers. I'm not sure if it's because the markers on the 37 millimeter are smaller and there's just not the same amount of real estate to apply lume, but it definitely fades faster. The case is very well finished with sharp lines between where the polished and brushed surfaces meet. Clean and simple case design, but with enough little details to keep it interesting. The case back is screwed to the case with 6 screws, and underneath the hood is the caliber L844.4 beating at 25,200 vibrations per hour with a power reserve of approximately 72 hours. Winding action is smooth. The crown is very easy to grip. It is a signed push-pull crown, and that's actually one somewhat of a big difference between the two watches. The 40 millimeter has a screw-down crown, and the 37 does not. So that is one area where the 40 has a small advantage. The bracelet is mostly brushed with a small touch of polish work on the inner edges of the outer link, and the outer edge of the mid link tapers down to about 16 millimeters at the clasp and has really nice fluid flow to it. The clasp is very thin when closed. It's well constructed, made with solid steel, and has 5 micro adjusts. And with that taper and the thin clasp, it's really comfortable on wrist. One thing to keep in mind with the bracelet is this came set on that middle micro adjust, and it fits my 7.25-inch wrist perfectly. If your wrist is bigger, you might need to track down a spare link or two. If your wrist is maybe, I'd say 7.5 inches or bigger, but maybe you're going to be opting for the 40 millimeter at that point, which does have a longer bracelet. Anyways, same as the 40 millimeter. Hopefully we can get this in focus here. We do have a small button here for quick release. The quick release system works really good. Just with a quick push, you can separate that end link for easy strap changes. As far as size goes, and we'll get them side by side here now, the smaller model comes in at right at 37 millimeters in case width. It is right on at 40 millimeters on the larger. The lug to lug is 44.8 millimeters on the 37, and it is 39.8 on the 40 millimeter. I'm personally okay with the longer lug to lug of the 40. I know it's a deal breaker for some, but the 37 has a much more compact lug to lug that's going to work for more wrist sizes. The lug opening is 19 millimeters on the 37, 21 millimeters on the 40, which, yeah, kind of a pain. It's getting a lot easier to get odd size straps, but for me, I'd rather pick from my collection of 20s and 22s than buy new. Thickness on the 37 millimeter is 12.2 millimeters, 12.7 on the 40. The water resistance on both is 100 meters, and the crystals are sapphire with a really good anti-reflective coating, although it's applied to both sides of the crystal, and that outer application will likely end up picking up scratches over time. So, quick recap of the differences, other than the size between the two, and actually one last big difference that we haven't mentioned that gives the edge to the 37 millimeter in the looks department is the date placement at the 6. Not only is it more appealing as far as its placement, but it's actually slightly larger and easier to read. Looks a lot better than the 9 o'clock date on the other. So, yeah, the date is definitely in a better spot, but the loom and the screw down crown give the advantage in those areas to the 40 mil. And here is the 37 on my 7 1/4 inch wrist. And man, this wears like a dream. It feels like it wears closer to a 38 or 39 for some reason, but it looks and feels great on wrist. I'll pop up a shot of the 40, and I'd be very happy with either watch. And even though I'd typically go for a 40 over a 37 millimeter, if given the choice, I think I lean 37 millimeter in this case. Funny enough, if I was given the choice of any watch in the Spirit lineup, it would be the even larger 42 millimeter Zulu. I love that watch, but there you go. You really can't go wrong with either. But if you were on the fence, hopefully this helps. So that is it. Really appreciate you taking a few minutes to stop by, and we'll see you real soon. Bye bye.